Welcome back to RandomRodShop, folks. Today I'm going to see if I can make some more headway on this, putting these cab mounts on the back of the 67 short wide bed that we've been working on. I'm going to start out by venting a little bit. In the last video you saw me take this cab mount off. I've got replacement panels for all 4 cab mounts, and you know, you guys saw me. This is kind of a pain to get out of there because it's rusted up all the way underneath this cab brace, so really need to replace the whole thing. And the stiffener where you put the cab mounts in, that thing was rusted out. So did my best to get this thing out in one piece. Okay, I thought that was the work, right? I thought that was going to be the trick. No. This replacement panel was a 1/2 inch shorter than that, and the angles weren't even close in terms of where they butt up to the on each end. Just one more piece of evidence that replacement panels, by and large, are not intended to be used whole. They're meant to patch what you have. So I've got a couple hours of retweaking, basically flattening out to get the 1/2 inch, I had to flatten out the ears and then bend them back and then reshape the bottom. And as this hole is too far away from the edge of that, so once I get it in there, I have to take a Dremel and cut out about 1/4. I'm gonna have to open that hole up about 1/4 inch further this way. It doesn't hurt anything, but all that said, this thing didn't fit. And I don't believe this truck's ever been hit. It's been squashed on the top, we saw that, but none of these panels really are showing a whole lot of damage or anything, so I think this is just wrong. And it looks like, you know, this, when you go buy this, you just buy 2 and it goes for both sides, which is interesting because, I don't know if you can see that angle, these ears have a slope to them because this rail is canted, right? Well, it's pretty much flat across there on both of these, so I guess it's intended to make the manufacturing cost as cheap as possible. They just make the same one, and 90% of the time it doesn't matter because, as we're going to see on the other side over here, I'm just going to use about this much out, right? And if you're just using pieces of it, everything's happy. It's when you really need to use the whole panel, the whole replacement panel, that you usually run into problem. All right. So on stiffener, right where the cab mount goes through, so you don't crush the bracket. Basically, I just made that out of I think that's 3/4 inch by 1.5 inch tubing that I had laying around. And I just kind of tweaked it around and bent it around. Looks like to me it ought to work. To start with, I'm going to put this back. I'm going to put this all in. Obviously, I've had this thing in and out, tweaking it and testing it and making sure it's going to fit. So this one, actually, this should go back together. We'll get this all screwed together. I want to see if I can make quicker work of the rest of these brackets. We'll see. Yeah, I don't know. This one, actually, maybe both of these. I'm going to have to get underneath that main stiffener on that cab on both of them. Let's see here. I don't know what it's going to take to get them out, but I'm of a mind right now on those. I'm going to just whack them out. We'll see what happens. This one, just going to cut it off up here somewhere. That one should be pretty straightforward. Famous last words, right? All right, let me get that one stuck in there. I like using these screws, but you only get a couple of tries at it before the Phillips head starts getting a little wiggly. So I put these screws in. When I weld this up, I'll take one screw out at a time and I'll weld it. I can weld that inner brace after I get this whole thing put together. Probably ought to loosen that up just a little bit. The trick on putting this bracket in here is it needs to go under this main brace, but it needs to go on top of that stiffener plate. So leave it a little loose, should slide in. Oh, yeah, and a putty knife to help it slide up. Saves you a lot of pain. Alright, so you can see I ran the screw through the front side, went through the new piece into the old metal, but that's a double layer back there. This I didn't really have a choice. It went through the old piece first and then the new piece. On these, the floorboard is kind of thin, so I'm going to run those screws from inside to out so that the threads actually connect on to the better metal, so that I can pull it tighter. And let's see, yeah, I'll get those put in before I put those bolts in. I don't want to lead you astray here and make you think this went pretty easy. I've got at least 2 hours worth of effort getting this thing to fit. So it looks like I'm just screwing these screws in, and this is going pretty good, but yeah, I've already spent a significant amount of time tweaking and fitting this thing, and the goal was to make the holes all line up so it all fits together. Don't let this video give you the indication that this one was a piece of cake, because it wasn't. Probably ought to make a comment. For those of you who, you've seen people use Clecos, or you use Clecos yourself, I've got Clecos back there. But in situations like this, I really like the screws a lot better, so I can actually pull everything tight together. If you look at the Clecos, the clamping force on the Clecos isn't, it's okay, but it's not going to do near what these screws do. So I needed to pull these flanges and everything. I need to pull the floorboard all down tight, or I wanted to anyway. And so I much prefer to use screws to do that. So I'm really not concerned about this area and this area, because I don't know if you can see that, but there's rust right there. So this panel is going to have to get replaced, and I ordered the rockers. It's going to take them a little bit to get here, but it looks like those rockers only come up to about right here. They just barely make the lip over. So I don't know about this area. I don't know. I've got to go look and see if I ordered a floor pan. If not, The rocker that I've got coming in will not cover that. So looks like there's a little dent right there, and you guys that's worked on these, this is pretty common for those spot welds to come loose right there on the sides. All right, and if you're in the truck, that just means you got a Flintstone mobile because mud's coming up. But it's got a dent there, have to straighten that out and then get that all cleaned up and weld that all back down. Anyway, I'm not real concerned about the fitment in this area and this area, so that's why I did put screws right there. It's sucked up tight up here where I need it, because I'm not going to replace any of this panel up here, and the flanges are up tight against this main rail. So once again, when I start welding this in, I'll take one screw out at a time. And that is hard to see right there, but that's what I was talking about. That hole isn't right. And if you look at the other one, the distance between the front edge of that hole and the end of the bracket is significantly longer than what the factory one was. So let me see if I can get a picture of that. All right, we're only talking that's about a 1/2 inch. This is a good 3/4 of an inch from the end of this bracket to the edge of that hole. So again, the hole isn't right. All in all, it works. You know, it's gonna do the job, but if you gotta use the whole bracket, yeah, just be prepared that you're gonna have to do a lot of fitting. Okay, I think that's in there. That's all solid. Been kind of debating of whether to start the bottom, but I think, you know, we're this far along. I think I'm gonna do the top, and I think I'm gonna just cut this out of here without a lot of hoo-ha. So what our plan is, given that I already know this angle isn't gonna be quite right, I'm gonna cut this off, and then I'm gonna cut this off and leave me like a 1/2 inch. All right, so I'm gonna make this about a 1/2 inch longer than what I plan on cutting out of here, so that I got room to fit, and when it comes time to put it on, I'll just trim it and we're gonna weld this bracket to this bracket. Because as near as I can tell, this bracket is all solid up here. Now, in case I didn't say it, I don't intend on putting that hole in. Fairly confident that's an alignment hole for assembly. And I don't know of anything that actually bolts up to that hole. I'm gonna leave these like they are. If you feel you need to put that in there, then you're just gonna have to beat this down and shape it like this, because this hole is horizontal, right? So you can't just put a hole in it, because that's not. All right, let me see here. I'm gonna get a screwdriver and I'm gonna poke just for good measure and find out if there's any weak spots. If there's not, I think I'll cut just on the other side of that hole right there. I'm gonna get another battery for this thing. You guys that watched last time, you know I was talking about I picked up a lot of parts for the 67 Mustang. And one of the parts I picked up was an 8.8 rear end. This little animal right here. And it has aftermarket axles in it. All right, from the 10 factory. I don't know anything about them, but I got to thinking, well, it's got aftermarket axles, and I could tell it had a limited slip in it. I took it apart yesterday, and somebody's replaced the ring and pinion in it. It's got 31 spline axles, and it's posi-track. So it's a 331 gear. I don't know if I said that. So I'm pretty happy with that. I think that is going to work really well in that fastback Mustang we're working on. And yeah, we will get back to the Mustang. It seems like the last 2 years I'm in rust repair. The Camaro, the rust is done on it. I've got a little bit of welding. I've got to crawl under it and do all of the floor plan, make sure I didn't miss anything on the floor pan underneath it, because everything from the firewall to the valance in the back is new metal. And on the Mustang, all the metal work's done on the Mustang too. It's ready to go into epoxy primer and start body working the thing. we've still got this 67 and we got that 57. And I think that's the last major rust repair we're going to be doing for a while. It's really not playing nice on my lens. Let's see if we can get this over here. So, any of you who's wondering, this is one of the jobs that a plasma cutter actually comes in handy. I've got a plasma cutter over there, but the air compressor is sitting inside the corner over there, and it doesn't allow me to do much videoing when that air compressor is running. So we're just going to cut it out with a grinder. But if you got a plasma torch and you need to do this, this really this is a perfect use for a plasma torch. All right, I'm gonna get this cut out of here. You can see what I'm doing. I'm gonna whittle away until I've got all of this gone, and then I'll bring you back when we're getting ready to fit that new panel on there. All right, well, things go faster when you're not trying to save the old part you're trying to pull out of there. So I got this one cut off, and it's close. Still need to trim it up. So I think what I'm going to do is I'll draw a line on there so I can see about where it needs to cut. This is not the cut line because it's still not where it needs to go, but this gives me some idea of where I need to cut. All right, so that's not too bad. All right, so I think I'm gonna trim the bottom of this one a little more. If you cut too much, you just gotta fill it up. But I prefer not to do that. I think I'm gonna leave about 3/8 of an inch on the other side of that line. And that should be getting me close. All right, let me get that cut off there. Okay, well, it took me a couple of cuts, but it actually fits in there pretty good. And before I forget, the trick on making sure you kind of got these in the right place, or you've got them okay, is the bottom edge should be flat. Right? So if you get it in there and this gets cocked, you end up with a big gap. So basically all I do is, I line it up here, line up the flanges where the old flanges were, and I try to make sure that is pretty straight, pretty flat across there. And this one's not bad. So in this case, I think I do need to drag the welder out so I can get this positioned, this edge positioned right here. Then I can poke and pry and I can drill some holes and I can screw this thing together. But I definitely think I need to fix that edge right there so this thing don't move around, because we get to the bottom down there and I suspect we're going to be banging and prying, and I don't want this to move. So I'm going to drag the welder around here and I'm going to go ahead and get this welded up. All right, just tack welded in. I went ahead and drilled the holes, put the bolts in. Now I'm going to put some holes in the flange and put some screws in it, and then we're going to dig into the bottom. Let me put a couple screws in this, and then let's think about what we're going to have to do for these bottom brackets. This one's easy, relatively speaking. All right, well, that's in there. I'm going to go ahead and weld this up and just get that out of the way. So, and then I'll get back with you. I don't know if we're going to finish it, but we're going to see what these bottom ones look like. Okay. All right, I got that thing welded up. let's look at these things. All right, so that mount is rusted. That mount is rusted all the way back, and you can just barely see the rust through right here. So this mount is going to have to come back to here. Now that thing is attached. You can see that it's attached. There's a, let me get this in here. There's a flange from the main cab structure. There's a flange there that's welded to the mount. And it would appear that that flange there is welded to that same cab mount. And obviously this is welded to that cab mount. You get down here and this lower flange is actually welded to the back of the floor pan. It's going to take me a while to clean this out, because basically I need to get both of those old mounts completely out past these main cab supports and get it all cleaned up so that we can fit these. And it looks like we're gonna pretty much have to use the whole thing. Well, that went well last time. All right. I don't know how this video is going to end. I don't know. I'm going to shut you off, and I'm going to start cleaning this out. If I can get it cleaned out and get time to start fitting these, I'll bring you back. Otherwise, I'll come back and I'll just make an ending to the video. So, I guess for you it's going to be, a couple seconds, and you'll figure out what happened. For me, it's going to be the rest of the afternoon, probably. All right. Thought I'd stop for a minute and show you what I ended up doing on this thing. So I ended up just cutting the whole thing out because I was going to mangle everything by the time I got it out. You can see the piece we're trying to replace is this piece here. That piece right there is the rest of the cab support. So, and right, I've got patch panels. Got patch panels for this whole section, and I've been using a plasma torch. So there's the air compressor. All right. So I'm going to take this over the bench, and I'm going to drill the spot welds out, and I'm going to get this piece back out because I need it to put back on here. But getting that all out of the way is now going to make the putting that panel in a lot easier. And I've got to replace the floorboard anyway. So it ain't like I lost anything. The only thing that I cut up that I didn't have to cut up was this little piece right here. All right. I've got all the cab mounts positioned on there and semi-welded in. Let's have a look. All right. So I think we saw that one. All right. So we've got that one. Got that one welded in. Since I've got to do the floor also, I'll come from the inside when I'm doing the floor, and I'll finish plug welding these things. And I think I showed you, hopefully I did. It's been a few hours since the last time I filmed, Anyway, I ended up cutting the whole thing out. You can see where I welded the runner in that I cut. In the end, that was a whole lot easier than trying to get it whittled away from inside this cab brace here. Most of the time they're just rusted out on the ends, and you can just whack them off and you can replace that piece. You can see that I ended up going ahead and just coming past that brace on both sides. Since I had them cut out, it was just a whole lot easier to make that weld outside, or I guess inside, those cab braces. In terms of fit, these actually fit quite a bit better than these did. They still required quite a bit of tweaking, but all in all, it wasn't, I didn't have near as much trouble on these. It was kind of a good deal that the cab was rusted out back there. That made getting access to the whole thing a whole lot easier. If the cab would have been good, you know, above those cab mounts, I'd have to be a lot more careful getting them in and out. I couldn't have just taken a sawzall and cut the things out. So in the end, it worked out. Now that this thing is stabilized on the bottom, my plan is I'm going to clean this whole bottom up. I've got it pretty clean, but I'm going to go through here and finish cleaning this up. I'm going to paint the whole bottom of it. My thought is I want to put this back on the truck. One, I can get it out of the floor, but two, I want to put it back on the truck so that I can do all of the rockers and the floors. I'd rather have it bolted to the truck when I'm doing rockers. Hope you found this interesting. If you want to see how we got to this point with this 1967, I'll put a playlist up here. It'll pop up here somewhere. And until next time, I'm Random at RandomRodShop, and I'm out of here.